welcome to this explainer. Every so often we come across a story that is just, well, completely mind-blowing, and today we're diving into exactly that kind of story. We're going to unpack the life of a man who essentially transformed theological education across all of Southeast Asia, Reverend Dr. Andrew Gibb. Now, this isn't just your standard dry biography, not at all. It's really a masterclass in how one single person's unyielding vision can create this massive generational ripple effect that literally reshapes entire institutions and communities all over the globe.
Right, so picture this. You step off a boat into a brand new country. You have absolutely no funding, no infrastructure waiting for you, and zero guarantees of success. That is exactly what Andrew Jim Dada did back in 1951. He arrived completely empty-handed. But, as his own words capture so perfectly, he wasn't relying on some massive bank account or corporate backing. He was running purely on unshakable conviction. I mean, it's a stunning leap of faith, and it's one that completely rewrote not just his future, but the future of thousands of others.
And that massive leap of faith, it birthed the Southeast Asia Bible Seminary, or SAAT as it's known today. Today, it stands as one of Indonesia's absolute top-tier evangelical seminaries. But remember, it definitely did not start with grand architecture or endless resources. He started it simply because he saw this dire, urgent need to train local pastors and missionaries, and he just decided to do something about it. That one foundational moment triggered a ripple effect of education and leadership that we are still fundamentally feeling today.
Now, to really grasp how wild this impact is, we kind of have to rewind and look at his origins. Back in 1901 Shanghai, his path was anything but predictable. Think about it. His father was a classical Confucian scholar, and his mother practiced traditional Buddhism. He was steeped in a deeply traditional upbringing with literally zero interest in Christianity. So he wasn't bred for this legacy at all. Actually, he was about as far from it as you could possibly get. He essentially stumbled right into it.
And the way he stumbled into it is just fascinating. As a teenager, he enrolled in a school operated by the China Inland Mission. But here's the kicker. He only went there to learn English. It was a purely practical decision, just trying to pick up a new language skill. Yet, while he's sitting there trying to master a new vocabulary, he encounters the Bible. And that exposure radically transforms his entire worldview, leading to his conversion. He went in for a language lesson and he walked out with a lifelong mission. It's crazy to think that a simple desire to learn English altered the entire course of theological history in Southeast Asia.
Once he made that pivot, though, there was no stopping him. After his conversion, he became an absolute powerhouse evangelist. In 1931, he co-founded the Bethel worldwide Evangelistic Band, and over just 4 years, he and his team traveled to well over 100 cities across China. Now just stop and think about the sheer logistics of doing that in the 1930s. No modern highways, no high-speed transit. It required relentless energy, immense personal sacrifice, and a completely unshakable dedication to his calling. And we are not talking about small, localized gatherings here either. Wherever the Bethel Band went, they drew staggering, stadium-level crowds. We are talking about tens of thousands of people completely changing their lives. Andrew Gissel had this incredibly unique blend of simplicity and absolute urgency when he spoke. He just had a knack for connecting with everyday people, and it sparked these massive revivals that swept across the entire nation. He wasn't just changing a few minds, he was mobilizing an absolute movement.
So tracking his journey, you can see how this insane momentum is building over the decades, from his birth to those massive crowds in the 30s. But then, a massive interruption. In 1949, major geopolitical shifts in the establishment of communist rule in China forced him to leave the mainland. Just like that, the huge momentum he had built is abruptly halted. He's forced into exile, essentially having to start over from scratch in his late 40s. Totally separated from the movement, he poured his life into building.
But here's the thing about Andrew Gibb. You might displace him, but you absolutely could not defeat him. Recognizing that there were now massive displaced Chinese communities spreading all across Asia, he pivoted. He founded the Evangelized China Fellowship. He didn't let the profound loss of his home base stop his mission, or even dampen his spirit. He built a completely new organization from the ground up, specifically designed to support, organize, and minister to these scattered communities. His resilience here is just off the charts.
Which brings us right to his pivotal 1951 visit to Indonesia. He originally went there just to conduct a few meetings. But it forces a really compelling question, doesn't it? What actually happens when a guy arrives in a completely new land, looking to help but carrying absolutely nothing but his faith? Well, I'll tell you what happens. He starts observing. He sits down, he closely listens to the local leaders, he pays attention to their daily struggles, and he identifies a critical, systemic problem that desperately needed solving.
Because what he discovered upon his arrival was a massive, glaring gap. It was like a giant puzzle missing its centerpiece.
Local churches, particularly Chinese-speaking congregations, were growing rapidly, but they were absolutely starving for leadership. They desperately needed trained, culturally fluent pastors and Bible teachers. In fact, the local church leaders pleaded with him to help them establish a theological school because they recognized a hard truth. Without educated, locally rooted leaders, their communities just wouldn't survive, let alone thrive.
And this brilliantly illustrates his revolutionary solution. His vision wasn't to import a bunch of foreign missionaries to come in and run things top-down. That would have been the easy way. Instead, his vision was to empower local leaders who already deeply understood the Indonesian language and culture. He wanted to train faithful teachers, prepare homegrown pastors, equip local missionaries, and strengthen theology from within the community itself. It was a strategy of profound, sustainable empowerment.
So, putting all that vision into action, he successfully opens the school in 1952 in Bandung. And remember, he's doing this relying entirely, and I mean completely, on God's provision and generous supporters. He was leaning right back into that empty-handed faith we talked about at the beginning. Just 2 years later, it's growing so fast it has to move to Malang. And he gently guided its steady evolution over the decades until, in 1981, it officially became the Southeast Asia Bible Seminary, a true testament to patient generational building.
Now, throughout all this massive institution building, you'd think things would get complicated. But G kept his core messaging incredibly focused. No ivory tower theology here. His teachings always boiled down to personal conversion, prayer, and holiness. But most importantly, he insisted, literally demanded, that theological education couldn't just be an isolated academic exercise. It had to result in practical, active ministry. Sitting in a classroom was step one. Getting out there and sharing it was the whole point.
Jump forward a bit, and Andrew Gee's incredible earthly journey comes to a close in 1985 in Los Angeles at the age of 84. But wow, the legacy he left behind. He didn't just leave a fond memory. He left a vast, robust network. By the time he passed, he had established churches, schools, seminaries, and orphanages operating across multiple Asian countries. He took that original empty-handed leap of faith and somehow built a sprawling infrastructure of hope and education.
And if you're wondering what that impact looks like today, it is incredibly quantifiable. SAAT alone has produced well over 1,000 graduates. Think about that. These are pastors, evangelists, and missionaries actively serving right now in Indonesia and around the world. Every single one of those 1,000-plus graduates represents thousands of other lives they've touched. It proves the monumental, compounding scale of what he built. It's an exponential curve of influence.
So, as we wrap up this explainer, I really want to leave you with this powerful question. What kind of legacy can one single person build, starting with completely empty hands? Consider that staggering ripple effect. The guy started with a simple desire to learn English, faced exile, arrived in a totally new country with absolutely nothing, and yet built an institution that shapes global leaders today. It really challenges all of us, doesn't it? It makes you wonder what we might be capable of building with the resources, or lack thereof, sitting right in front of us.